okay.
I'd say gamers are unique. No two gamers are alike.
Not a hater on the video games.
Actually, I enjoy it. I think it's a healthy environment for you guys to have fun, recreation.
Go for it.
One glorious morning at about 10 a.m., my buddy Phil and I were in the middle of an intense drive to our local game exchange when out of nowhere, Phil attacks me with a question.
Hey Nick, why does everyone say that gamers are nerds?
I looked at him in mild confusion and began pondering as I nailed him with a headshot of an answer. I don't know. Maybe they just haven't seen real gamers.
This got me wondering, am I a nerd because I play games? Am I part of this stereotype that society has labeled as a loser and a waste of life? Nick and I have spent hours and hours and hours of our lives on games, staring at the television and interacting with a world that we wish was real. But why? Why has society labeled people like Nick and me as nerds, geeks, and losers? I looked at Nick and decided something had to be done. We must find out why people call us these things and if they are even true.
Since the late 70s, people have been playing games. Everybody remembers the early classics like Pac-Man, Galaxian, and Pong that triggered the gaming fad. But along with this trend came something both harmful and absurd, the stereotype. That's right, just like discrimination against blacks, Hispanics, and women, gamers have become a target of hate. Since the beginning of gaming history, the stereotype of a nerdy, glasses-wearing dork that lives in his basement and has no friends has been drilled into the minds of non-gamers as the truth. But this is where society has gone wrong, and this is why Phil and I have come out of our state of dormancy to unveil the real truth, that gaming has evolved, and that this discriminatory stereotype needs to be put to rest.
We found that the average people of today's society, as in people who are aware of gamers but don't actually play games themselves, are unaware of the different kinds of people that play games. Nick and I went to the local library and did a little research. Our trusty friend, Wikipedia, defines a hardcore gamer as someone who has video gaming as their top priority. In contrast, casual gamers are occasional video game players who might not even identify themselves as gamers. This should explain something. Just because one plays games doesn't mean that they are obsessed with games.
I don't know, like, some people are athletic that play video games and stuff.
Many people view gamers in many different ways, but they all end up looking like
Dorks.
This poses a problem as most gamers are not dorks. A lot of the misconception could be due to the types of societies of gamers. Many gamers take their fascination of gaming to the streets and are punished for it. Luckily for 5 young high school girls, no charges were filed for leaving Mario blocks in random locations throughout their neighborhood. Another outlet is through the purchase of t-shirts. These t-shirts are seemingly only humorous to fellow gamers, thus branding the wearer an outcast by those that do not understand.
It's not productive, you don't get anything done.
Another choice of action is a type of sublanguage similar to Ebonics. This language, originally derived by computer hackers and now used overwhelmingly by gamers, is made up of a series of easy modifications to the American language.
We decided to venture back to Game Exchange and we noticed that the store was not yet open. We would need to wait for 20 minutes to check out the wide selection of games that Game Exchange has to offer. This leads to another highly mistaken idea: video games causing violence.
Do you think games promote violence?
You know, sure. I mean, what doesn't? I mean, the movies, television, all this is going to have a violent aspect to it. Violence can be very destructive, but it can also be escapist. I like to think, I'm hopeful that when people play violent games that it's cathartic in a way. It's a way for them to not be violent in the normal life. So I guess I don't want to buy into the whole idea that video games make people go out and hurt people. I don't know if I believe that.
The news-presenting media decides that every time a young man or woman shoots someone else, they need to find some interesting twist. Claiming video games are the source for the problem provides the greatest benefit possible: ratings. Why is this so easy for people to do? Because video games obviously contain raw footage of violent acts. However, if games cause as much violence as the media says they do, then there would be countless amounts of outrageous school shootings and robberies from teenagers.
I wouldn't say it's promoting violence, because if it's just a form of media. You could say the news promoted violence.
Claiming video games as the problem generates a lot of viewer attention, thus boosting ratings. What the casual viewer neglects to realize is that those news networks have an ulterior motive. Fear-stricken parents remove all violent games from their household, only to allow their children to watch those very stations, therefore boosting ratings through fear-mongering. Taking a brief look at the recent blockbuster, Stay Alive, a movie enforcing the statement that violent games can have an effect on reality.
It's role-playing, and if you don't understand that it's role-playing and you don't understand the difference between playing a game, role-playing, and reality, then there's a problem.
With the recent surge of the internet and personal blogs, parents are now seeing through the veil and are beginning to accept that video games are not the source of violence, but all types of violent media, including movies, television shows, news programs, the internet, and most of all, real life. Through the Department of Justice's website, people are finding that the introduction of violent video games may be preventing violence by keeping gamers occupied and away from violent situations, be they victims or culprits. Added to one of the DOJ's graphs is the release of certain violent video game media. From this perspective, the release of such media has lowered the violent tendencies of American youth.
After the store opened, Phil and I soon found out that a regular store employee was not entitled to give an interview, so we were left in the dust. This forced us to play a round of Pump the OGB. This left more room for thought. Then there is the cost. Do you think gaming is a waste of money?
No, because it's entertainment. It's just like going out and renting a video or buying candy. You enjoy doing it, so buy it.
An average game for the Xbox console costs about $50. The console itself started at about $299, but later lowered to $199, then $179, and finally at $149. The new Xbox 360 runs for $249 to $380, while every game for this next-gen console runs about $50. This poses an obvious problem. Fill in the blank. All gamers are
people with too much time on their hands.
General consensus is that gamers spend all their time on the computer or playing their favorite system. The question is, with all this time wasted, how are gamers able to make any form of reasonable income? Well, first, we must reiterate the fact that most common gamers are casual gamers, not hardcore gamers. This being said, we must understand that games, for casual gamers, are a time filler, something they do in their free time. When gamers aren't playing, they are probably working for the money so that they can afford games. If not, then they often choose to spend the little money they have on what they enjoy. Gamers actually have a fairly common life outside of their fantasy world. Gamers do everyday things just like the rest of the world. Just because they seem like hermits and appear reclusive does not mean they lack normality. If gamers fit the stereotype that most people give them, then half of the world's population would never be seen. Those people that are not seen do not lack social interaction, they just lack physical interaction. Many gamers can be seen posting on what are known as forums. Similar to blogs and instant messengers, forums were started to allow lengthy group discussions that remain active for the duration of the host's website, so that anyone entering the website may jump into the conversation without missing a beat. In this respect, gaming forums are more courteous than the average conversation, which lasts, on average, 7 minutes and requires a brief explanation to anyone who recently joined.
So, what have we learned?
Well, over the years, gamers have earned a reputation of being violent hermits that spend all their time in the basement of their parents' home eating week-old Doritos. This stereotype is something we strongly disregard, and we believe that gamers are normal people.
The problem is that, through the evolution of gaming, the media has added to the persecution of gamers and made the popular MTV watchers think that all gamers are nerds. This is, obviously, ridiculous.
We have found through our extensive research that gamers cannot be thrown into one large category of nerds. There are gamers who seem to be nerds, but there are also the gamers whose lives are not drastically altered due to gaming.
We have drawn a line between the hardcore gamers and the casual gamers, and we can now differentiate between the two based off of social status. The lives that these people live are based on their own free will. Very few people can be altered so much by a video game that it leads them to violent or outrageous actions.
This, obviously, shows that violence in young teens is not a result of violent video games. There are other factors and plenty of statistics that prove that gamers are harmless and only looking for a way to relieve stress. Therefore, the recent and many attacks on gamers is, as stated, futile and meaningless.
Gamers come in all shapes and sizes, all social and cultural backgrounds.
It is up to society to show that the masses that there is nothing to fear.
I don't think games promote violence. I don't think they discourage violence.
They're not normal. They're just lazy and they just want to play games all the time.
There's a lot of ways you can waste your money, and playing video games probably isn't one of them.
Boom! Headshot!